Good morning, Village Church. Grace and peace to you. Between a rock and a hard place. Ever been there? Or should I ask, when was your last visit? I myself am a frequent traveler to that uncomfortable spot. And right now I'm thinking about a hard place quite literally. As I've been working on this little homily, Nancy Kirsten and I have been preparing for a camping trip. Apparently, even a pandemic does not exempt me from having to go camping. But that means, once again, I'm on the hunt for yet another layer to place between the hard ground of the tent bottom and me. So far, there's the yoga mat, an inflatable air mattress, a moving blanket, another moving blanket, and my sleeping bag. Altogether, it's still not enough. I might as well be sleeping on a rock. So I feel for Jacob in today's Old Testament lesson, snuggling up to a stone for a pillow out in the open country. We know he was in something of a hurry, but couldn't he have just swung by the local Walmart on his way out of town and picked up a soft and luxurious down alternative fiber-filled pillow on sale for $9.95, just like I did during last summer's camping trip? And how come he doesn't toss and turn all night with his head resting on that stone, as you might expect? No, instead he has this awesome dream of a ladder between earth and heaven, with angels ascending and descending on it, and God there at the top or at his side, it's translated both ways, bestowing on him this all-encompassing blessing of land, lineage, and divine protection. What a riveting story with unforgettable imagery that has inspired art, song, dance, and poetry. But this is more than a tutorial on makeshift camping. I believe that Jacob's unnerving journey in the wild, alone, frightened, way outside his comfort zone, with only a stone for a pillow, can ironically give us comfort as we ourselves are sojourners in unfamiliar territory these days. First, we should backtrack to pick up the thread of Jacob's story just prior to today's reading. You may recall that Jacob and Esau were fraternal twins born to Isaac and Rebekah. Esau, the firstborn. Esau, the hunter, the outdoorsman, was favored by Isaac, while Jacob, who stayed at home close to the tents, was Rebekah's favorite. When Isaac grew old with failing eyesight, he prepared to give the inheritance to Esau, the rightful heir, as the eldest. But Rebekah caught wind of this and conspired with Jacob to impersonate Esau and steal the blessing from him. They pull it off. But when Esau discovers he's been defrauded of the inheritance, he's furious and vows to kill Jacob. Jacob suddenly has a price on his head, and he has to flee to his uncle's house. That's where we catch up with him, on the lam, running for his life. And though Genesis condenses Jacob's travel, this was no quick overnighter. The distance was about 500 miles. So Jacob is in a tight spot between a rock and a hard place, between a home where he is no longer safe and exile in a foreign land, between lost ease and familiarity and the uncertain and the unknown, between the dark of night and the dangers of the wild, between a past that is now fractured and a future that is not assured. Like Jacob, we too have reached a certain place right now in our society and our culture and our time, a no man's or no woman's land in between the isolation of home and the dangers of pandemic outside, between lost wages and the risk of working in unsafe conditions, between a shattered economy and continuing inequity, between civil unrest and denial of our ingrained racism, and if you're a person of color, between the unforgiving asphalt of the street and the unyielding knee of a policeman gone wrong. Is it any wonder that a person caught between a rock and a hard place sometimes can't breathe? And yet, It is in this constricting, narrow, suffocating, closed-in place that Jacob encounters God, and so can we. Jacob's dream is rich with the symbolism of a stairway to heaven and angels ascending and descending. The cosmology is ancient, heaven above and earth below, but the stairway connects the realms together. Heaven and earth are in a dynamic relationship with each other, and perhaps the angels personify that with their continual passage up and down and up. Are they carrying messages to and from God? Are they delivering packages from Amazon? We're not told. But it is a beautiful picture of their attending both heaven and earth, God and humankind. Some commentators suggest that the angels prefigure Jesus in his role as mediator, the divine human go-between. And in the Gospel of John, Jesus makes what may be a reference to this passage when he's recruiting Nathanael to be a disciple and says, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." When God speaks in this dream, everything changes for Jacob. This isn't a judgmental God condemning Jacob for usurping his brother's inheritance. It is a gracious and generous God legitimizing, notarizing, if you will, the blessing that Isaac unwittingly gave Jacob, and in so doing, reaffirming a covenant that goes back to Abraham. Just as important as the material wealth of this blessing, land and descendants, is the four-part promise of God's presence. I am with you. I will watch over you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. The dream may well have been Jacob's first experience of God, and it is transformative. Jacob goes from being a despairing fugitive to an active and willing partner in God's plan. His campsite is no longer an anonymous stopover, but now named Bethel, meaning the house of God. The stone pillow becomes the cornerstone of a monument to Jacob's encounter with God, and dark, terrifying night lights a path forward. Finally, this stopover in the wilderness ends with a curious twist Jacob gives to God's promise. He turns it into a covenant statement, an if-then proposition. If God will do all the things God promised in the dream, then Jacob will make the Lord his God. This is how I hear it, adding some bold-faced emphasis. If God will be with me and watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, then the Lord will be my God. I wonder if this isn't a tacit acknowledgement by Jacob that on his own merit, he isn't worthy of God's blessing. Wait, you're going to do all this for me, God? Well, then I'm all in. I make a promise to you, God. God's blessing comes to Jacob as pure grace, as completely undeserved gift. Jacob's trials and challenges did not magically vanish after this night. His life from here on would not be a series of picturesque Instagram posts. He would labor for his uncle Laban for some 20 years and be deceived by him in an interesting turn of events. Jacob would quite literally have to wrestle with God. But God will make good on the divine promises and fulfill the covenant first made with Abraham. God opens the same gate for us that he did for Jacob. I prefer the translation of our text that places God beside Jacob rather than above him. The promise to Jacob is the promise to us. I am with you. I will watch over you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. It is precisely when we're in the between places, the between times, that threaten to squeeze the life out of us, that God finds us. Maybe God does his or her best work in these tight spots, because that's where it's needed the most. And all that God asks of us is to join in. So, when can we expect relief from the threats that seem to surround us on all sides? When will the rock crack and the hard place give way? In today's gospel, Jesus offers a parable about dealing with the evils of the times. Let the weeds sown by the enemy grow together with the wheat sown by the master tells his servants, lest they uproot the wheat in trying to eliminate the weeds. Come harvest, the Lord will take care of the problem. Until then, I think we could infer, don't let the evil, the sin that seem to be rampant, keep you from continuing to sow good seed. In the meantime, together, we're traveling this unfamiliar territory, often feeling like we're in the dark, navigating our way through a plague of plagues. But Jacob's dream shows us that there can be moments of transformation, of heaven coming down to earth, and earth reaching to heaven, and our God inviting us to step into this vision. I'd like to conclude with this poem by Denise Levertov, The Jacob's Ladder. The stairway is not a thing of gleaming strands, a radiant evanescence for angels' feet that only glance in their tread and need not touch the stone. It is of stone, a rosy stone that takes a glowing tone of softness only because behind it the sky is a doubting night gray. A stairway of sharp angles, solidly built. One sees that the angels must spring down from one step to the next, giving a little lift of the wings. And a man climbing must scrape his knees and bring the grip of his hands into play. The cut stone consoles his groping feet. Wings brush past him. The poem ascends. May our prayers for healing, for wholeness, for peace, for justice, for breath ascend like poems this morning. Let the church say, Amen.